Okay, this is the first video lecture for Psychology of Personality, Marshall University. Today is Monday, Labor Day. As promised, this is the first of several video lectures that you will be viewing and taking notes on. By now you will have received an email with the links for these YouTube video lectures. Pretend like you're in class. This is just like being in class. Take notes just like you were sitting in class. I will prompt you as we discuss these terms. And you'll probably have 3 or 4 different video links, and the email will have spelled this out for you that you receive. So, what I want to do is kind of set the stage here. It's always better to kind of do this on video anyway. When you talk about basic theories, and this is a personality is a theory class. And anytime you talk about theories in psychology or any science, it can be a little dry, so I'm going to do my best to try to liven this up as much as possible. And it is important that we talk about the major theories in psychology because they will underlie the different personality theories and the discussions that we have about personality as we go through this course. Now, I realize that you've probably been exposed to these theories before, probably in intro classes, Introduction to Psychology, and maybe even in some other classes. But I want to do a quick recap. And some of these theories we'll get more in depth with as we go, like learning theory, especially this stuff on behaviorism, this stuff on psychoanalysis, psychoanalytic theory. We'll get more in depth as we go through the course. But there are 4 major theories that we're going to talk about. Now, the first picture, obviously, anytime you talk about theory, you got to throw in a random cool picture to keep people awake and interested. So there you go. You don't really have to know anything about that picture. It was just something for you to look at for a second. Okay. Now, there are 4 major theories in psychology that I want to perhaps review. If you've not been exposed to these, it's okay. You're going to get that now. Structuralism is the first theory in psychology. It was the first comprehensive theory that psychology had to offer. If you've had Introduction to Psychology, you have heard of Wilhelm Wundt. He is considered to be the founding father of psychology. And Edward Titchener, who was a student of Wundt. Structuralism focused on identifying the building blocks of consciousness, or the elements of conscious experience. And you'll want to jot that down. You'll also want to know that Mr. Wundt was the founder of psychology. That's kind of important as well. You probably learned that in intro, but I want to give that to you here as well again. So we're talking about identifying the building blocks or the elements of conscious experience. So we're thinking about thinking. For the first time in a scientific way, we're trying to evaluate the thinking process. And any discussion of personality, like we talked about the first night of class, involves not just the behaviors and the emotions, but also the cognitive stuff, the thinking stuff. Now, introspection is sort of the method that was used by the early structuralists. Introspection literally means to look within, or to look inside. I would know that. I would get that in my notes too. Looking in, or looking within. This is not something that is objectively verifiable. I mean, you can't really measure objectively what somebody is thinking, or even what somebody is telling you that they're thinking. So we get some shortcomings with this theory. But, so, again, structuralism is identifying the elements of conscious experience. Wundt characterized 2 types of elements of consciousness. You have, and I would write these down, you have sensations, which arise from the basic sensory organs, like the eyes, the ears, touch as well, taste, smell, and feelings, such as anger, love, and fear. So these were the 2 types of elements of conscious experience according to the early structuralists. And again, the idea of introspection means to look inward. Now, I want to kind of, hopefully this will work. The structuralists looked at the overall conscious experience, kind of like a grid, if you will. Okay, I'm going to try to set this in front of you, and we're going to see if this, hopefully this will work. Maybe. You see this grid, okay? the elements of conscious experience. Each piece of this grid represents one element or one building block of your overall conscious experience. And whatever it is you're introspecting about or looking inward to explore about yourself, each of those elements collectively will make up your overall conscious experience. Let me see if I can give you an example. We'll start with a concrete example. And you may think, what does this have to do with personality or personality theory? But you'll see soon. This is a good old-fashioned tape dispenser, Scotch tape dispenser. Why introspect about a tape dispenser? Well, for practical purposes, let's try it. Again, we have the same grid here, okay? Each one of these little boxes, you see the arrow, represents an element of conscious experience. So if I were going to ask you to introspect about the Scotch tape, I would ask you to tell me, if we were in class, I would say, tell me everything you observe or notice to be true about this tape dispenser. And what you might start to say are things like, well, it's made of plastic, it's on a roll, it's sticky, there are black colors in this, there are green colors in the tape dispenser, and there are yellow colors. And if you don't believe me, I'll stick it back up here again. You can kind of see the different colors. And we could go on and on and on. You could even point out that the tape smells kind of funny, if you can read that. So eventually we would fill in every block or every piece on this grid, and we would come up with our overall conscious experience as it relates to this tape dispenser. Okay. You're probably thinking, well, it's not really practical to do this. Why are we doing this? Again, the idea early on was to get us thinking about thinking. No one had ever really tried to objectify or really scientifically examine thinking or thought processes. So this is psychology's attempt to sort of strive to be scientific. Now, let me give you maybe a better example. I had a student in class not too long ago who wanted to introspect about her ex-boyfriend. So I went there with caution. So I asked her to say to me, or to tell me everything she knew or understood to be true about her ex-boyfriend, leaving out all the bad stuff, of course, because this is a G-rated class here, hopefully. So again, we have the same grid here. You can see this is the grid. So I had her introspect about her ex-boyfriend, and she came up with things like, well, he's an idiot. She did say he was tall. He's a cheater. He was a biology major. He was quiet. He had black hair. And of course some things I can't repeat in a psychology class, so I don't want to get fired. So you can imagine some of the other things that she was that she may have said. But she kept going through all these different physical characteristics, personal characteristics, personality attributes, if you will. And she eventually filled up this entire grid, which eventually represented her overall perception of her boyfriend, which was not overly positive or pleasant. So anyway, we'll go ahead and call this the end of the first part of the video lecture on the 4 basic theories of psychology. Thank you.